Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Chris Lee. Commodore fans, on your feet. It's time to anchor down.
Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our episodes are presented by Dr. Jody Jones, DDS. We're part of the 440 Sports Network. Our guest today, Chip Frederick. And Chip will join us to talk about Vanderbilt's baseball series loss at Alabama, and we'll reset some things going forward. Chip appears on the guest line that's sponsored by Sutherland & Belk, a family-owned injury law firm. If you or a loved one has been hurt in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call at 615-846-6200. See what your rights are and if they can help. Now on to our episode with Chip Frederick. Chip Frederick joins us. It's Monday morning. Vanderbilt has completed its series at Alabama. It did not go the way the Commodores wanted on just a weird weekend in Tuscaloosa. Luke White was down there, and I want to talk to him maybe later in the week about that. But Alabama fires its coach, who, by all appearances, did not necessarily have his team's best interest in mind with some of the decisions he made. Bama changes coaches right before the series, walks off with a 2-1 series win. Not the best weekend for Vanderbilt, Chip, but at the end of the day, the Commodores still tied with Arkansas. It's a new team now. LSU was ahead, but now Arkansas and Vandy, after LSU loses the final two games to Auburn, now falls to third behind those two teams. Anyway, that is a long preamble to welcoming you to the show, but appreciate you joining us today, and I'm looking forward to talking some baseball.
Glad to be back on, Chris. And yeah, a crazy weekend when you look at it. You go into it with the first game on Thursday not going the way you want, and give a bunch of runs and almost get run ruled in the process. And when the dust settles, it wasn't a good weekend for any of the leaders, really. I mean, as you mentioned, South Carolina gets, when I say leaders, those are the top of the standings, close to the top of the standings. South Carolina gets swept. Florida loses 2 out of 3 at Texas A&M. Tennessee, who's been making a resurgence, they lose 2 out of 3 at Georgia, who's now 10-14. And we talked about the importance of Georgia having some victories this weekend on last week's show, how important that was. And they come through and win 2 out of 3. And LSU loses 2 out of 3 and relinquishes their spot in the SEC West, as you just mentioned, to Arkansas. So, this just proves, and you and I have talked about this on air, and we've talked about it off the podcast, of just what a balanced year this year is in college baseball. How there's a lot more parity and a lot of teams not doing well on the road, especially in this league. They're going doing well at home, but when they go on the road, they're encountering different beasts, and they're not getting the job done. So, as the dust settles here and we're on a Monday morning after that, the conference series where Vandy loses 2 out of 3 to Alabama, they didn't really lose anything. I mean, as far as Kentucky gained a little ground on them, but they're still, three games back, and Vanderbilt's got the tiebreaker. So nobody really gained ground on Vanderbilt, where in striking distance, although you said Kentucky, those are 3 big victories. They started the weekend at 11-10, and now they're 14-10. But as the dust settles, it still doesn't make you feel any better than you did when you on Thursday afternoon, when all those situations in Alabama, that could have gone 2 ways, Chris. And talking to people that I'm friends with who follow baseball, they were either going to lay a big egg, Alabama meaning, and not show up, and Vanderbilt was going to beat them, sweep them, and you got chaos. You don't know, you got a new coach, and all these doubts of why was our coach allegedly doing this behind our back and behind the world's back, or they could have rallied like they did, and next thing you know, they win 2 out of 3. It could have gone either way, and unfortunately, Vanderbilt they found a very motivated team in Alabama, and things didn't go well. But in summary, a lot of people waking up on Monday morning in the SEC at the top of the league and not feeling very good about where they did, as opposed to when the weekend started. So strange things continue to happen. There's 6 games left. A lot of baseball to be played. Vanderbilt controls their own destiny with Florida this weekend in Gainesville, which is a tough place to do that, and then wrap up with Arkansas, the leader of the West. So you're talking about looking at the standings. the next 6 games, Vanderbilt is playing teams that are right behind them and on the other side, at least the current point, top of the league in the West, to determine where they're going to fit in the SEC tournament, and probably more important, where they're going to shake out as far as being a national seed. I think hosting is going to happen, but whether they can get in that top 8 and guarantee themselves a chance to be a national seed.
It's going to be really hard for them to fall out of the top 8 national seed picture. I mean, they're going to have to really face plant. I'm just looking at the numbers. I've spent a lot of the last 2 days, and I'll do a bracketology thing, regional projections for my SEC stuff. But, yeah, I mean, they have banked so much at this point, and they've got 2 more series coming up that are premier series that I just, barring a 1-5 and a midweek loss or 2 in there, it's going to be hard to see how they don't host 2 weekends. And, barring much of anything, it's going to be hard to see how they don't host at least 1 weekend. But maybe I'll get to that later. Maybe I won't. A couple things, and like every time they have a weekend where they lose a game or 2, the fans just go crazy and they convince themselves they're no good and the hitting stinks and they don't have enough pitching. And I don't know, I just kind of roll my eyes at some of it because I think a lot of people know my job now is I spend more time watching the SEC on the whole and more time on that than I do just Vanderbilt. And everybody's got problems, man. As you look around the league, it's just a matter of weighing their problems against everybody else's. And so with that, I'm going to do a little exercise here. And for whatever reason, when people start bringing in advanced analytics to college baseball, people dismiss it. Their eyes glaze over. Like at the major league, this is like everyday talking points. I don't know why these things have not filtered down into college baseball yet, but they haven't. But anyway, if you have ears to hear, here's some things that I find very interesting. If you sorted the SEC standings in conference play in run differential, here's how it goes. Vanderbilt plus 64, number 1. If you want to go Pythagorean record, which is taking the runs scored and runs allowed and seeing what the record should be, Vanderbilt's actually overachieved by 0.4 of a win there in SEC play. And again, I think at college baseball, it's a little different than major leagues because you have uneven pitching on weekends, and sometimes you let a guy sort of soak one up for the team and give up some runs where maybe you could structure your pitching a little differently. So if you want to bring that up as a criticism, I wouldn't push back, but I would also say that applies to every team. So anyway, Vandy number 1 in run differential in league play. Kentucky number 2 at plus 50, 14-10. Kentucky's actually underachieved by nearly 2 games according to run differential. Arkansas, which is tied with Vandy overall, plus 36. Arkansas has overachieved by 2.3 games according to run differential. LSU, I know the narrative is LSU is clearly the best team in this league. According to Pythag record, LSU should be 13.5 and 9.5. Plus 32 in run differential. LSU's got some serious pitching issues that got exposed this weekend. South Carolina, which is continuing to get injured, number 5 at plus 31. It should be about 14 and 9 in the league according to record. Tennessee next, plus 25. Tennessee is almost 2 games under what the record should be according to Pythag. Then Alabama plus 15 despite an 11 and 13 record. Alabama is the most underachieving team in the league according to run differential, which is why I've said I think Alabama's a really good team. Florida, which is 15 and 9, plus 9 in run differential. That is the most overachieving team in the league. 2.4 wins above what the runs differential, the runs scored, runs allowed say it should be for what that's worth. Followed by Texas A&M minus 4, Georgia minus 25, Auburn minus 30, Missouri minus 49, Ole Miss minus 52, and Mississippi State at a whopping minus 113. State has given up 237 runs in league play, Chip, which is more than twice what Kentucky and Vandy have allowed.
Which is why their pitching coach got fired last week. And
it didn't get any better over the weekend.
Right, and of course we must. Not that an asterisk means anything. I mean, Mississippi State did give up 26 to us. I mean, not saying that makes that much difference. It might
in 7 innings.
And it inflates our numbers a little bit. But yeah, those. But
Vandy gave up 17 to Tennessee, so it sort of evens out. Yeah.
True. And yeah, I mean, it's just craziness when you look at the fact that if the season ended today, that both Mississippi teams wouldn't be in the tournament, in the SEC tournament, and they're getting close to being 500 on the season overall, and that's kind of hard to do in the SEC. The last couple of years, very few teams have done that. At least have a winning record with the non-conference games, but those two are at the bottom. But yeah, it's that those numbers do say a lot, and a little surprising that Florida's numbers, and then the LSU. So repeat that. LSU, according to that theory, LSU should be 13. What did you say? 13 and a half and 9.5. I know they're what's
13 and a half and 9.5. If you want to go according to expected wins to the decimal point, Vandy 16.8, Kentucky 15.8. Arkansas 14.7, LSU 13.5. LSU, of course, lost a game to a rain out. South Carolina 13.6. Same story there. That LSU game got rained out. Tennessee 13.9, Alabama 13.2, Florida 12.6, Texas A&M 11.7. Hey, shouldn't that be Vandy? Georgia 10.2, right. Auburn 10.0, Missouri 8.6. Ole Miss 8.5, Mississippi State 5.6. We need to get that to 5.8. But anyway, right. There's your standings.
There would be.
Right.
And the crazy thing too, when you're talking about all these stats and analytics, Kentucky once again takes over the number one RPI spot, which it's just sometimes teams and they were talking about this on the broadcast. I watched South Carolina a little bit and Kentucky play, and the remark was, which was very poignant, that the RPI doesn't care that South Carolina has people hurt and they're banged up. And so they get a sweep over South Carolina at home, and so that inflates that number. South Carolina is the number 3 RPI this morning. Kentucky's now number 1. It goes Kentucky, Wake, South Carolina, LSU, Arkansas, Vanderbilt. Those are the top 6 in that order. So Kentucky gets the benefit of you talk about banged up teams. I mean, you've got, South Carolina and their issues and all over the league. Ole Miss, top 3 pitchers are going to have Tommy John. It's going around everywhere. And I think when we look back on this, and I don't know if there's any way to correct all this because it's the race to pitch 190 miles an hour to get over that 90, 95 mile an hour range if you're a pitcher, and it's too much torque in the elbow, and you're seeing it more and more and more with these, and it's continuing. But in Arkansas at that 5 spot, I think they're a team, Chris, that if they get healthy and can continue to get healthy at the right spot, I think they're an Omaha team for sure, and they're just creeping up at the top of the standings now in the West, and that will be interesting to see. And then the other story about this is how, when you're talking SEC, which we are right now as a whole, more than any year that I can remember, it is going to be very interesting, and it might be uninteresting when it comes to the weekend, but how these teams approach the SEC tournament in Hoover, more than any year that I can remember. I think you're going to see a nonchalant, let's get home as soon as possible. Not really, but in a backwards way, sort of, that you're not going to see anybody gamble in the first Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday games, and even sitting people to then. You're going to see some weird stuff happen in that tournament, because I think with the arm injuries that everybody's having and the balance that's happened, I think you may get some guys who are tired and banged up in general. It could lead to somebody just totally random winning that tournament.
Yeah.
And I don't know who that would be.
The only pushback I would give, there's so many elite teams that just showing up and being half interested, that could put a roadblock there. But yeah, I mean, you could see Missouri or somebody get to Saturday just because.
You would think it could possibly be an older team, a team that has some veterans, or Alabama even. If Alabama gets...
Alabama's a perfect one. Kentucky.
Yeah.
Although Kentucky's in a little different spot. But
yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how it works for that tournament in Hoover. But going to be strange if it ended today that the 2 Mississippi teams that bring a lot of people to Hoover, we talked about that last weekend, wouldn't be in it. And after State, who within, a 2-3 year period won the national championship and have just fallen on their face. Mississippi State didn't make it last year. This year, not going to make it. Fire their pitching coach. Ole Miss started on a down. They were going downhill fast at the end of the season, barely make it in. We're going to fire their coach. Bianco is going to get fired. Everybody knows that. They keep him on, and they go on a win streak and win the whole thing. And it's just kind of weird from the same state, two programs, rival programs, and those two teams need a reset, definitely.
Yeah, and there's a lot to bite off here. First of all, people have asked me about, like, what would it take for Vanderbilt to fall out of a top 8 or top 16 or whatever. And this is, look, it depends on what other teams do, right? But let's just play this out. Let's say that my guess is the most likely thing that happens this weekend is Vanderbilt wins 1 of 3 in Florida. Now, again, statistically, I talked about the run differential and everything. Vanderbilt looks like clearly the better team. Now, when you get into matchups and Florida always being able to get in Vandy's head and that being in Gainesville, that's a whole other set of facts. And I think that one could be the most important one. But like if Vandy wins, remember this, the run differential is pretty different from those two teams. Now, granted, teams have played different schedules, but Florida, I think, also drew one of the easier schedules in league play, too. So there's that. Let's say hypothetically, let's say even if Vanderbilt goes 0-3 in Gainesville next weekend, let's say they come to Nashville, take 2 of 3 against Arkansas, which is 6-7 on the road. Then at that point, if the RPI stays constant, you got Kentucky 1, Carolina 3, Arkansas 5. Vanderbilt would have gone 7-9 or 7-2 against the top 5 of the RPI. And that's why I just say that, if you do that, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter what else you do, because, yeah, it's going to matter some in the seeding, but I just don't know how they don't host 2 weekends if that's the way it plays out.
Well, and absent of them just falling flat on their face and getting swept in Gainesville and having Arkansas take 2 out of 3 and lose to Louisville midweek tomorrow night and in Louisville, something like that, I could see them falling out of the top 8 if that just. But barring short, they're going to host, but that I think that gets into the conversation if you take a look at their body of work over, and then they start looking at what happened in Tuscaloosa and you start taking the big picture and looking at it of how Vanderbilt's played in the last month. But short of that, I don't think Vanderbilt fans need to worry about them hosting, but the all important, top 8 and being able to host if they win a regional. Now, what happens too is you got to worry about, the NCAA, we've talked about this. It's not like a weighted situation in basketball where, sometimes they try to play to the gate and play to the crowd and stick some people in a regional that perhaps would not be. It's supposed to be like that, but you and I have seen all too often some creative workings going on in regionals where they try to get regional matchups. Where all we've talked about for years there was how Louisville and Vanderbilt would be in the same regional, and that did happen. Now, it hadn't happened recently, but for years that happened, and so you don't get the weighted. You still want to be the 1, 2, or 3 seed in the nationally top 4 or 5, whatever, and because you think it happens that way. But I think you and I have seen that before, where sometimes it doesn't matter as much as it does for instance, in basketball. Won't you agree? I think we've talked about that before.
Yeah. They will lean on regional balance and geography. Now the interesting thing, we'll get to Louisville in a minute. Louisville is not in the tournament if you pick the field today. This season of the Vandy Sports Podcast has been made possible by my friend Dr. Jody Jones, DDS. When it comes to general or cosmetic dentistry services, Jody is the best in Nashville. Just check out his client list. It testifies to that. He sees movie stars, music stars, athletes, coaches, you name it. Jody is the dentist of choice for stars in Nashville, but he sees regular folks like you and I as well. What people love about Jody's office is the ambiance. It's relaxing, it's friendly. Someone described it to me as a tooth spa. Whether your needs are general or cosmetic, go see Jody today. Call him 615-270-2322. See him at 55 Music Square East, not far from downtown or the Vanderbilt campus. Jody is a former Vanderbilt football player and a huge Commodore booster, so go and talk Vandy sports with him while you're there. Go see Jody Jones today. Thank him for his support of this podcast, because without it, this season would not be possible.
Yeah, Louisville being 29-18 overall, 9-15 in the conference.
14. Oh, 9-15, yeah.
9-15, and their RPI. I would have thought their RPI would have been a little higher, but they're 30th. I think Louisville is 30th in the RPI. Yeah, 30. Which is a little surprising, but Vanderbilt on Louisville, that battle always gets to be, it's a heated one, and that it'll mean a lot to them. But yeah, Louisville got swept in Clemson in early. Let's see, it was this past weekend.
Yeah, they got swept at Clemson.
They're reeling a little bit. Yeah. So they lost 2 out of 3 the weekend before to Miami in Louisville, and they've had some. They got swept at Duke in Durham the last week, the midweek in April 21, 22, and 23. So they've been on a little slide here lately, but still the victory matters, and it'd be a top 30 RPI victory for Vanderbilt if they can get it. But we all know that game is pretty tightly wound as far as the competition. Those guys want to win it on both sides.
All right, so I got a little distracted because I was researching something on Louisville as you were speaking, because I've got a prediction for Tuesday. This is what's going to happen, and this is going to drive Vandy fans bonkers, because it seems like this is what always happens in that ballpark. Louisville will find somebody that's thrown about 10 to 15 innings on the year and start him, and that guy will two-hit Vanderbilt for 5 innings, and then they'll go to, they've always got a pretty good back end. They'll go to set up guys and stuff, and it'll be 5-2 Louisville at the end of the day, and the world is ending. Kate, I'm looking at candidates. It's just, if this goes to Caden Campbell's got a 5.87 ERA with 15 1/3 innings. He's made 1 start this year. 19 strikeouts to 5 walks. I have no idea if that's who they're going to start or not, but I'm just trying to go by history and blueprint and kind of where this team is right now and the intersection of what could go wrong and the fans being worried about stuff. I can totally see it playing out like that on Tuesday.
It has happened. It has happened before. I'll tell you that much. And we've seen it. And in this rivalry, we've seen guys from on the Vanderbilt side too come through. But there's a lot of emphasis played. I mean, of course, they have to battle the barrel that they trade back and forth. Whoever wins that game, but we have seen that all too often on the Louisville side, where there's a guy they throw in and he looks like he should be a weekend starter.
Yeah, let's get to Vandy for a minute, Chip, because I look at it and I go, you got Hunter Owen back to pitching at a dominant level after kind of an okay start last week against a Kentucky lineup that, again, I think is really, really tough. He didn't have his breaking ball, and he still gave up, 2 and 4 innings, which was good against that lineup. He got the breaking ball back. You saw how that went in Tuscaloosa. Futrell was terrific. He's been just super consistent all year for them. To me, it's a matter of getting Carter Holton right. And to me, there's some things that you can explain there. I don't know what it is that he's struggling with his landing point. I don't know if that is the arm hurting has made him compensate with something else, and that's how it looks. I don't know what it is, but the whole thing where he can't get comfortable on the mound with the landing spot is just kind of weird. But, man, if you get him back to pitching reasonably close to Carter Holton, there aren't a lot of teams in the country that can match the 3 they got. Then you throw Maldonado and Ginther, and you can piece together a couple innings from somewhere else. I mean, they got 3 guys, if they can get Holton right, that are, can get you through a lot of innings. And again, I look at the pitching around the country and around the league. There just aren't a lot of teams outside of Wake Forest that can match up with Vanderbilt if you get him right. And to me, that's the key. Got
to get him right. And Vanderbilt's, I don't say this lightly, if they can't get him right, it's going to throw the entire pitching rotation and what you're talking about in disarray. Because I mean, he skips the Missouri series, comes back, just has a horrific series against South Carolina, doesn't get out of the first, pitches okay against Tennessee, well enough, but it's still not the sharp that we're used to. Uphill battle against Kentucky, seems like he's just swimming upstream. Can't, in every game, every inning in that part is a struggle. He hits like 3 or 4 guys. And just in this situation, 1 2/3, 4 earned runs, 1 strikeout, 2 walks, 56 pitches, and 1 2/3. And you're seeing a high level of volume in pitches from Carter Holton in a limited number of innings. And ever since he stepped foot on this campus, when he was a freshman last year, this was talked about. And so this is something that is obvious. The coaching staff sees it. Corbin sees it. Scott Brown sees it. It is a point of emphasis. It's talking about his rushing, that he gets sped up, that he gets in the flow of the game, and it's almost like a hyperactive where he is, he works faster than any pitcher on the team, bar none. I mean, it's painfully obvious that the pitch clock don't even need to have one for Carter Holton, because he gets the ball, and fielders love playing behind a guy. The game goes quick, but I don't know if that's what they're talking about, being sped up, that he's just deliberately not taking a deep breath, settling his heart rate, and going through it. But that's continually said. When he has a bad outing, it is that he's getting sped up, that he's doing it himself, or he's causing the other team to do this. And that's been his trademark. So it's something that obviously they know and they're working on it, but they got to get that right. They have to get him into the part where he is the dominant player that he can be, because if they don't, and this continues to go on, I mean, there's already some discussion. I'm not inside information, but there has to be, do we want to keep him on Friday night? The trademark of what's going on. But to do that, you have to mess everybody's spot in the rotation up. And now the short week with Thursday coming last week, and that's a big deal. A lot of people think, we'll just switch up and we'll let Owen go on Friday night. Or we'll move Futrell to Friday night, Owen on Saturday, and then we'll put Holton on Sunday. Well, there could be some validity to that, but you have to understand that affects 3 people. It doesn't just affect Carter Holton. And so there's a lot that has to be taken into that. And you're wondering, some people say, well, wouldn't that just take some pressure off of him being a Friday night starter, moving him to Sunday, or doing that musical chairs? Well, there's a lot that goes into it more than just switching around the order. And, I don't know if it's a landing point, if it's something that he's compensating for because he has an injury that we don't know about specifically. We know that there was some tightness, but they've got to get that right, because a Holton, Owen, Futrell trio in a regional or a super regional is hard to beat and hard to match up at. But you got to have all 3 of those guys working together individually in their games and then as a unit. And right now they don't have that, and it was disappointing. It seems like we got Owen back. He looked dominant on game 2. Futrell's just kind of been, he's had his moments, but he's been steady. It seems like Futrell, he's going to be good for 6-7 innings, and he's going to give up 2-3 runs each outing, and he's going to strike out 8, and he's not going to walk many people. And he's been the consistent guy in this whole thing. So they're just going to have to get it right if they're going to have any success in the postseason.
All right, I'm going to take a walk back down memory lane a little bit. And I can't believe I didn't think of this till last night, but do you remember who Vanderbilt's number 1 starter was in 2014?
Let's see, 2014, hit it with me. I've got a couple candidates, but
it was Tyler Beatty. And do you remember what the second half in the postseason was like?
Oh yeah, it
was a mess.
Yeah, he started messing with his delivery and his motion, and he was taking hands above his head, and then he went to hands not taking above his head. I remember that all too well because I talked about it in Omaha. Noticed that. I mean, it became a mind game with him. He could not get it right, and once it started floundering for him, he never was the same. Oh yeah, I remember now.
Do you remember what happened, who the number one starter in 2019 was.
Let's see. 2019, was that McIlvain?
No, those Drake Fellows.
Fellows, yeah.
And that was very hit and miss. Sometimes he could go 7-8 innings, give up one or none, and sometimes like the Duke game where they got just clocked on Friday night at the Super, where they lost 18-6 or whatever. That was a Drake Fellows start. That was kind of the roller coaster they rode. They lost game 1 to Michigan in the College World Series. I don't remember if it was a good start or a bad start, but I just remember he made the start. Point I'm making here is that they've had, on the two teams that won it all, they had big inconsistencies or troubles from their Friday night guy, and the rest of the staff was good enough to pick them up and win it all. And I think I can make the case that's the case again this year. I mean,
yeah, but that Friday night game is so important. I mean,
it is, and I agree.
I mean,
that's why I think if they get him right, they're really tough to beat.
And they have to get him right. Yeah, I mean, he was the one of the three that you were thinking, to me, if you went into the season, and I think that's why he's the Friday night guy, that, he's going to give you 5, 6, 7 innings, but it's his, again, we talked about this last week, it's the ability to pitch inside you like, but when the hit batsman that he's had and the fact that he's throwing so many dadgum pitches, that is what you don't want. I mean, an inning and 2/3, 56 pitches. Last week, what was it? It was in the 80s, right? I mean, it was through 2 or 3 innings, he threw 80 pitches. Yeah. And, of course, Kentucky was fouling a bunch of balls off last weekend, the weekend before this past, and contributed to a lot of that. But that's where it worries you a little bit that model of consistency that we were used to is not there right now and hasn't been there. And I don't really remember his outing against Tennessee, but you're talking about a 4-5. There's enough sample there now, Chris, to look at this. If I am those guys making decisions about the rotation, this is not a 1-week thing. This is not a 2-week thing. We have to go back.
It's half a season at this point.
Yeah, right. And so that's what worries me a little bit, that it's something that he can't get together. I'm not saying he doesn't have the ability to, but I think they need to find out real quick.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't buy the fact that Carter Holton isn't any good. I just think it's a mechanical issue or health issue or whatever, however you want to phrase it. I don't know what the truth is. But so there's that. I think you have to start looking at Friday as Carter Holton / Patrick Riley and maybe having a quicker hook. And also, my goodness, why they didn't have somebody else ready for Riley after 85 pitches or so in his appearance. I think they let him go 102. I didn't get that. There were a lot of pitching decisions that I didn't understand all weekend.
Yeah, Riley, when you haven't thrown that many pitches and then you're thrown into that situation, you get wasted pretty quickly. I mean, you hit a wall when you have it. Now the weekend before, I think he had stretched himself out in that game against Kentucky when I talked about he was the star of the weekend last week. In that series, by the way, he just kind of saved the day and calmed the game down and got them that victory. But, it was a little surprising they didn't have anybody up in that situation. The other one probably would be, and you and I discussed this, Thomas Schultz, bring him in. It's when you're a pitching coach, I'm sure they collaborated and said who you want to go with. You want to go to back to the well with a guy that you've depended on many times in the past, who's a strike thrower, who has a high level of velocity like Schultz. You want to give him back out there and give him another opportunity. And that was one that, when he came in, that was a little surprising. I was driving when I was following the game and heard that he was coming in for the 8th, and it was a little surprising to me that he was the one chosen. And then bad things happened after that, and the solo shot, and couldn't close it out. But I think you and I discussed that was a little surprising to you too.
Yeah, well, then they went to Bryce Cunningham right after that, which was another thing I just didn't see. I don't know. Look, I'm sure they had a reason. I may or may not disagree with it, but I wonder what was underneath the surface there, because the obvious move would have been to go to Maldonado or Ginther. And that's 2 weekends in a row that in a Game 3 situation, they didn't do that.
Yeah, and looking down of who, I still like Ginther. They are going kind of Ginther Maldonado. That's the Ginther to get kind of the bridge between the starter and Maldonado, is what they've done. I don't think Laboki didn't get the ball this weekend. I don't think, right? If I'm mistaken,
Correct.
I don't think he did. It's just, and then with Dukanich, Chris, you wonder. This is just talking out loud, and in this modern day of portal and draft eligible at an earlier age, and some sophomores are draft eligible, but Dukanich, I mean, he's a redshirt to me possibility. That's what if he's only thrown 6 innings. Do you think that's a possibility? I'm just really surprised he's not gotten back out there, unless there's just something that we don't know. It's like one of those hockey injuries in the NHL. They don't tell you to the end of the year, and then we find that this mystery report comes out at, in 2 weeks from now. Well, Andrew Dukanich just tore his hamstring instead of strained it. It's torn. You just don't know. And I know that's been asked at a couple press conferences, but at 6 innings for the year, I think he would. If he doesn't pitch, I think if you don't get him out there before the Arkansas series, do you think it's worth it bringing him back, or does it matter in today's era?
Yeah. If he's healthy and he can pitch, then absolutely, because he's a draft eligible sophomore. Redshirt year is immaterial.
Okay.
I mean, unless this just goes horribly
that's what
wrong.
I was talking about. Yeah. Okay. I didn't realize he was. I was giving that as an example of these kids sometimes being draft eligible as sophomores. So if that's the case, you got to get him out there. Yeah, it doesn't do any good.
Yeah.
If he's healthy.
Yeah, I don't know if that was something in the matchup, if that was hey, it worked with Schultz last weekend, let's see if we can get 2 in a row. Because I do think that he makes a lot of moves to see what can we get in postseason and who can we count on. And it feels like to me, he's never said this to me, nobody's ever said this to me, but this is just my watching it and knowing him and trying to figure it out. I just think that, because look, they built themselves a margin of victory here, right? I mean, other than if your goal is the SEC championship, then maybe you cost yourself that with a pitching decision or 2 this weekend. If your goal is to see what can I count on in a regional, super regional Omaha situation with the game on the line and pitching a guy in a pressure situation, then it makes more sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. I mean, you're setting yourself up that you might need him down the road in a tight situation. You want to give guys opportunity. So I do see that. There's what has changed over the years. You got teams just busting it and bending over backwards trying to win East Division titles and Western Division titles and SEC regular season championships. And I get all that, but I think the game has changed a little bit with what's going on. That it's just you want to put yourself in the best position for the postseason tournament, and I'm not talking about the SEC tournament. I'm talking about the big one, and and I think a lot of teams have gone to that, maybe to where 15 years ago, that wasn't the case. But let's get the elephant out of the room. I mean, he's sitting over here in the corner. When we were talking about decisions with Schultz, I know that's this. I glanced at your board a little bit, and it was discussed about the bunting, no bunting, sacrificing in the ninth. Because I know that's probably on a lot of people's minds there, and I know you and I texted, and it didn't bother you all that much.
No,
when Vastine flew out to the shortstop in that situation. So I'll let you go first. And
I think runners first and second. What they had: Vastine, Espinal, and Bradfield due up, and Bradfield ended up getting hit. I don't mind it. I think if a guy can just put the ball in play, and I guess with Vastine that's an issue. And if you want to take issue with that, there I'm fine. Now what I thought they should have done. I thought they should have pinch hit Bolger for Espinal, because that's a guy who's much more successful about putting it in play. To me, you just need a guy to put it in play. And to me, if you If you bunt in a double play or a force somewhere where you don't want, well, that can also happen with a bunt too. It didn't really bother me that much. And you have Bradfield coming up who can usually put the ball in play, although he did take some bad hacks at occasions. I don't know. I wasn't as up in arms with it as everybody else was, but I also get it too. Maybe with Vastine being the first guy there and him striking out a lot, maybe it's more of a fair point than I acknowledged at the time. But it at first blush, it didn't bug me that much.
Let me ask you a question. This is just, and I think you know the answer, but it's one of those rhetorical questions. How many teams in the SEC do you think have a catcher who bats fourth, and when he doesn't play, he's good enough to bat fourth, cleanup, right?
Yeah.
When he plays, but when his replacement bats ninth, and you don't DH him. So in other words, what I'm saying is, if Bolger's good enough, and I know we have a DH now with Maldonado, but if he's good enough to bat fourth, cleanup when he plays,
then why is he not DHing? Yeah, look, I have not disagreed with that all year. That is one thing that I just do not understand.
And that might be just righty-lefty stuff, statistics, putting the ball in play, all those things.
Other righties too.
I know. I just that's one thing that kind of, and it was brought to my attention this weekend, and I said, I don't have an answer. It was, but you see my point.
Absolutely. It hasn't made sense for me all year.
Okay. Well, and when I started thinking about it, I go, well, maybe I'm the crazy one that I hadn't figured it out as well. But that does seem a little strange to me. I just with the way that number 4 over there in the third base box plays statistics and is been known to play small ball, and it surprised me a little bit that he didn't bunt him over. Now he showed bunt. Vastine showed bunt on the first pitch, and it was a 1-0 pitch, and I think it was a ball. I mean, it was the first pitch. It was a ball, so it was 1-0. Then he flies out, which a little strange to me. And then you have Espinal come up. If he had runners, if he sacrificed, and let's assume that he gets thrown out at first, you get runners at second and third. Espinal's up with 1 out. Then Bradfield, it seems like you could have pinch hit there, as you mentioned, put the ball in play, get a fly ball, sacrifice fly, whatever, and that just didn't happen.
Yeah, and I know there's always hand-wringing over not hitting in clutch situations. That's a thing that people have just gone on ad nauseum for years, and this team doesn't have it. I mean, I've heard it all over the last decade. I think Aria Garcon had tweeted something out before the weekend. I think Vanderbilt was batting like 30 or 40 points higher than the second-place team in the league in league play with runners in scoring position or something like that. Like they have been doing crazy well at hitting when it matters this year.
And that was just this on Sunday. What were they? 1 for 13 in runners in scoring position. 1 for 13, 1 for 14, something like that. It was abysmal. So you're going to have games like that. You're going to have outings when you're not getting the pitching. If you're LSU and you're so good on Friday night that you look like you could. Well, you don't look like. That lineup on Friday night for LSU could beat anybody in the country the majority of the time. But then there's a huge drop-off in that situation on Saturday.
They are shaky. Yeah.
Yeah, so every team – I don't think there's a team out there – I know there was some discussion on the SEC network and that, Wake looks like, as far as if you take rotation, if you take how they are doing, the age of their team, if you're talking about how they've played – they're 13-5 on the road. They're road tested. Again, rotation lineup, up and down, 1 through 9. They look like the complete team, as opposed to LSU being a dominant on one night. You got to win 2 out of 3 to win a super regional, and when you get to Omaha, you got to win more than one. So it's going to be a tough road for anybody when they face Skeens, who's probably going to be the national pitcher of the year, undoubtedly. I don't think there's. I think if it was held today, it would be him. And you got to win more than one game to win it all.
Yeah, Wake is the best team in the country to me. Most balanced, end of discussion. I think it's pretty clear to me. And if you want to go back to complete teams, and I will start here again. I think just Owen and Futrell alone give Vanderbilt one of the best rotations in the league, no matter what Holton does or doesn't do. And if Holton is pitching, again, like he can, they've got the best rotation in the league. Fielding percentage, looking at this right now, league games, Vanderbilt number 1, 985. And as much hand-wringing as there has been about the offense, who's number 2 in the league in runs scored in league play, Chip?
It's not LSU. It's is it? You told me and I forgot. It's not, LSU's like 4th or 5th, right?
It's Vandy. It's LSU 186, Vandy 181. Everybody else, South Carolina, Florida 170 and below.
Yeah.
As much as people have been up in arms about they don't have an offense, it's not any good. I don't know what to tell you. I see some of the same things that, yeah, sometimes there's a little too much swing and miss at the bottom, but like that happens everywhere. I mean, those are the facts. People can make up what they want and tell me their lineup's not any good, but if you're not any good, how are you number 2 in the SEC in runs scored in league games?
Yeah, and just when you think that people are ready to give up on somebody, Davis Diaz showed out this weekend with the leather and the bat, and then so it's up and down. I'm not sure what happened in left field this weekend with the old musical chairs there. You had Alabama wins 11-2. Polk's in left, goes 0 for 3 with a strikeout, and then has a bad error in left, and then which is something you haven't seen. We've talked about one thing we've talked about the last 5 weeks, and I've said it probably every podcast, is the fact of the consistency of this lineup that they've thrown out there. And then it looks like in game 2 and 3 of this series, they tried a little something different with left field, and which I don't understand. I still question old Cal Hewitt is not getting more chances. But anyway, that's just me. But like, once again, you're just not seeing. You're seeing 6 position players that have played and gotten at bats outside the top 9. And of those 6 that have gotten the extra at bats, one guy's got 5 at bats. One guy's got 2 at bats. One guy's got 9. Troy Leneve. So you're really talking about a sample of, and again, just that seems a little different to me in years past. I keep pointing that out, and I don't know why that bothers me. And when I say bothers me, just depth wise with some of the people that they've had recruiting classes. That there's not some more competition out there for some of these guys who maybe have been struggling lately, but it's just not there. And and that just seems a little peculiar to me as compared to years past.
Yeah, they've been fortunate that they have stayed injury free in the lineup, I think, because, and maybe, who knows, maybe if somebody does get hurt, maybe somebody who's not been playing steps in and with the opportunity proves to be more capable than but. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much that matters at this point as long as they stay healthy, but I have a theory. He must have gotten ticked off about something with Polk because, and I know he dropped the fly ball. I came in, I went on a popsicle run to the fridge when he dropped the fly ball, which, by the way, they play so quickly right now. Like, you barely have time to step into the kitchen between at bats or even innings sometimes, and a lot of times, most of the time I've come back and I've missed a pitch or two. I didn't even see Vastine bunt or try to bunt for the same reasons. I didn't even see that. I had to step out of the room for a minute, and the pace of play is so fast now that you step away for a millisecond and you miss something. Yeah. But because Polk went from the guy that, like, they left in and let him swing away in the clutch against Kentucky on Sunday's game, and he hits that double into the corner. That went from they didn't take him out for defensive replacement that Sunday like they normally do to put him in that spot to he drops a fly ball on Friday night or Thursday night, as it was in this case, and then you don't see him the rest of the weekend from game 2 on.
Yeah, and we don't really know the inner workings of what's going on in the dugout or what happened in that situation, but that was a little different. The fact that they tried that, once again, they've been so consistent, and they didn't go with they went with McKenzie, right? They didn't go with Hewitt in that situation. Hewitt's always you would think Hewitt would be the natural replacement if there was some switch in left field with the number of at bats that he's gotten. I mean, he's played in 37 games. He's played in 37 of the 47 games. So you would have thought. So that was a little, just threw up a light bulb there and made you question a little bit.
Yeah, and I know we're both up against it. You've got to be somewhere, and so do I too. But I'm thinking, I'm trying to remember. I'm going through, flipping through the scorebook. I believe, McKenzie started the last 2 days, right?
Yeah.
That may be one of those last ditch. We got a fourth-year guy who's done all the right things and flashed things, and let's give him a chance to hop in the lineup here and see if it clicks. Like, that's what happened with Vaz. Was it one or 2 years in a row?
Yeah, Vaz.
I mean,
exactly.
Occasionally you see a thing where he makes a move like that out of the blue. And it might have happened a little bit with Hewitt, but you see occasionally one of these things where a guy pops in the last 2 or 3 weekends of regular season play, and the next thing you look up and that guy's a fixture in Omaha. If McKenzie were to stick somewhere, this would not be the first time he's tried that.
Yeah, that's what happened with Leneve, if you remember. Leneve got his chance.
Yeah, but his was a lot earlier.
And
his was a lot earlier.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's true. It was more like, I thought it was like 4 or 5 weekends to go. For some reason, I remember it was more of a mid-April when he came in, when he made his charge. But yeah, you're exactly right. That's exactly what happened with Vaz. So who knows? We don't know once again, we don't know what's going behind the closed doors and in the dugout and in the locker room. And those are things that we might not ever know.
Yeah. Well, I'll do a podcast with Luke after the Louisville game, which I will probably not get to see much because my son's team has a playoff game. So that'll be interesting. But in any case, Chip, thanks for joining us today, and tell folks about your real estate business on your way out, please.
Sure. Just tell you a little bit about Frederick and Clark Realty real quick. We've got 2 offices in Green Hills, just about a block or 2 west of the mall, I guess you would say, west of Green Hills Mall, and one in Brentwood in the Maryland Farms. But the main thing is the people that we have in those offices. We have 180 agents who do this business full time. They know the Nashville market, the Middle Tennessee market. The ones in the Maryland Farms sort of focus on the Brentwood, Franklin, Spring Hill, but they sell houses anywhere. If you give me a call at 615-327-4800, be happy to hook you up and listen to your needs. That's the main important word, to listen to your needs as far as if you're selling or buying a home. Talk to you a little bit about the process, where you are, where you're wanting to move, or if you're just moving out of town and moving your family to some other community, unlike all the thousands and hundreds of thousands of people who were in town. Did you go to the Taylor Swift concert last night, Chris? I'm sure you're up to 1:30.
How much money do you think I make?
I thought the tickets were going to go down a little bit.
This is the wrong profession.
My daughter really wanted to go and was one of those weird things about the ticket market, but they did not go down. But anyway, thank goodness if I had gone with her and found tickets, I wouldn't be doing this podcast. I'd be asleep. But anyway, I digress. We have a website, frederickandclarkrealty.com. You can check out listings, active listings, inventory, things that we have for sale, and things that our cooperative realtors partners across the mid-state have for sale. So it's a great process. And again, I can listen to your needs, talk to you about it, get you hooked up with a realtor in our office that specializes in your home sale or your home buy purchase. It's still very important to get a professional on your side in this market, and that's what we're here for. So check us out at frederickandclark.com. 615-327-4800 is a number that you can get in touch with me.
Yeah, on that topic, I was told some grievances were aired by my 11-year-old over the weekend when I wasn't around about not having Taylor Swift tickets, which I didn't really know this was going to be an issue coming into the weekend, but sometimes 11-year-olds just complain about whatever's in front of them.
That's right. Well, it was a weekend that I wanted to stay as far away from downtown as possible. There was so much going on, graduations. They said a couple college graduations were going on. They said you had a concert at Bridgestone Thursday night. They did those 3. So hope they got a lot of cleanup crews getting all that. But I'm amazed. Last thing I'll say, I'm amazed how they got the ordinance. I mean, isn't there like a noise ordinance that exists in this town? Because that concert, I think they said it ended at 1:30. So in the morning.
I have
Somebody
no
got-
idea.
Yeah,
I'm the
so-
last. I never go out and do anything fun, so I'm the wrong guy to ask.
Come on, man.
I don't. It's true.
Well, you go to baseball games. That's your fun. That's your,
Right. That's my
So,
thing.
That's right.
Do you know where Taylor Swift went to high school?
she did not go here. I think she homeschooled. She did go to school here. Oh, come
Hendersonville
on.
High
Really?
School. High School
Oh,
of
that's
Champions.
right. Yeah, that's right. She did move. You're right. Now it's okay. She lived up there in Hendersonville. Right. Okay.
Yep.
I was. That's one of those strange. I went to a concert. I dated a girl when I was in high school, and we went to a concert at Starwood, which I'm dating myself here. But and the guy who I went with, we were on a double date, and it was Dina Carter. You remember the strawberry wine? And of course, at the time, had no idea who she was. She just dabbled in music. My friend said, and all that. And it's one of those things. You know, here this girl hung out with her, sat on the lawn, and that's my claim to fame as far as being stardom, that I hung out with Dina Carter when she was 18 years old. But I digress. It was a long time ago.
I hate that they closed.
But yeah,
Starwood. That
I did
was
not
a
know-
mistake.
But she went to Hendersonville.
Yeah, of course. All right, Chip.
What's that?
I said, of course.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, enjoyed it. Got a big week this week coming up, and hopefully we can take care of Louisville, and got a big weekend in Gainesville. Got to go down there and get a couple.
Well, and by the way, we didn't unpack all the stuff with Alabama. What a wild situation that was. Luke was down there, and I'll talk to him about that on Wednesday. But what a fiasco when your head coach is apparently betting against your team. I mean,
Yeah, that's. I want to listen to that. I want to hear what Luke has to say, because that especially with someone who was there and kind of talked to some people. I want to hear about that. So definitely, that's going to be a must listen.
well, and one more thing on the way out the door. Think about that a minute. The guy that you coach is doing things against your best interest in terms of you winning games. Like, how would you feel sitting in that dugout in the aftermath of all that? I mean, that's got to violate a lot of trust if that is the way it went down.
He's done. If that's he'll never get another job. I mean,
No,
that's
and shouldn't.
Right. So I want to hear what Luke has to say. I'll listen to that podcast.
All right, Chip, thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next week.
All right, Chris, take care.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. We thank our presenting sponsor, Jody Jones DDS. We thank our other sponsors, Sutherland and Belk and MyPerfectFranchise.net. If you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, and that's how we make this work, please email me at chrisley70@gmail.com. We also ask that you subscribe to our website, vandysports.com. That is $99 a year. You get things there that you don't get here. And of course, please rate, review, and subscribe where you see our podcast. That helps us get noticed. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at vandysports.com. Follow me at chrisley70. And finally, subscribe to our Vandy Sports YouTube channel as well. Thank you for listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast, which is part of the 440 Network. I'm your host, Chris Lee. We'll catch you with another episode coming very soon.